Welcome back, everybody. Ready to dive into something you experience every time you're online?
Let's go.
We're talking latency. You know, those annoying delays that we encounter online.
It's one of those things like when it's bad, it's super noticeable, but when it's good, we hardly even think about it.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, we've got an awesome article from the Byte Go newsletter, the January 23rd, 2025 issue titled Top Strategies to Reduce Latency.
A great read.
Yeah, it's got this crazy statistic.
Hmm.
Apparently, just a single second of delay could cost a company like Amazon a mind-blowing $1.6 billion in sales every year.
It really shows how important it is. Companies are constantly obsessing over shaving off even milliseconds.
It's not just about like a smooth user experience.
Yeah,
It has huge financial implications.
absolutely.
So can we break down what latency actually is? Like for those of us who aren't like total tech wizards, can we start with a simple definition?
Sure. So think about when you're waiting for a website to load, that spinning wheel or the blank page. That's latency in action. It's basically the time it takes for data to travel between points, like from your device to a server and back.
Okay, got it. But what about all those other terms like bandwidth and throughput? I always get those mixed up. Aren't they all just like about speed?
Yeah, they are all related, but let me give you an analogy that might help.
Love a good analogy.
Okay, so imagine a highway.
All right, picture it.
Bandwidth is like the width of that highway. More lanes means more cars can travel side by side, right?
Right, yeah. So a bigger highway means faster travel, just like more bandwidth means faster internet, right?
Well, not exactly. And this is where latency comes in. Think about a traffic jam. You've got all those lanes, lots of space, but everything's slowed down. You can have tons of bandwidth, but if there are delays along the way, that's latency, your internet's still going to feel sluggish.
Uh-huh. Okay, so bandwidth is kind of like the potential speed, but then latency is that, like that delay that throws a wrench in things.
Exactly. You nailed it. And then throughput, well, that's the amount of data that actually makes it through, like considering those real world conditions. So it's like counting how many cars actually pass a certain point, factoring in the traffic flow.
Okay, I think that finally clicks for me. Bandwidth is potential, latency is the delay, and throughput is what actually gets through.
Got it. So this article that we're looking at, it digs into different types of latency. Why is it important to understand these?
Because, well, different types of latency kind of have different solutions.
Right. Like you need to know what you're dealing with before you can fix it.
Right, exactly. It's like a doctor diagnosing an illness before prescribing medicine. You wouldn't treat a broken leg the same way you would treat a cold, right?
Right. That makes sense. So what are those main types that we need to know about?
So the article focuses on three: network, server, and then client-side latency. Network latency, that's all about distance. The farther data has to travel, the longer it takes. It's like sending a letter by snail mail versus email.
Yeah. Email's obviously way faster.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because the data doesn't have to physically travel.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if I'm trying to access a website that's hosted on a server that's like way on the other side of the world, I'm going to have higher network latency. Is that right?
Yep, you got it. And that's mostly out of your control as a user. But, there are companies out there like Stonefly who are really good at optimizing infrastructure. So if you are experiencing high latency, they can help you figure out a solution.
Okay, I was going to ask about that
Yeah.
because we all know Stonefly is great at those like really complex data projects.
Yeah, for sure.
So Stonefly can help with that like network latency piece. What about server latency?
Server latency, well, think of a really busy restaurant. If they're swamped with orders, it takes longer to get your food right.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So in a similar way, server latency is the delay caused by the server processing your request. It could be because the servers are overloaded, or maybe the code's inefficient, or even database issues.
So it's kind of like the server's just like overwhelmed and can't keep up.
Exactly. And again, companies like Stonefly, that's where they really shine, like optimizing the server infrastructure, making sure things run smoothly and efficiently. And they do this for like both on-premises servers and cloud environments.
That's awesome. So that's two down. What about client-side latency?
So client-side latency, this one's all about your own device. Have you ever tried to open a really huge file on an old, slow computer?
Oh yeah, totally.
That's client-side latency. Your device is just struggling to process the data quickly.
Okay, that makes sense. So like my ancient laptop, like chugging along trying to load a video.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah.
It could be a bunch of things like inefficient code, slow hardware, or even if you're just trying to do too many things at once on your computer.
Makes sense. So we've got these three main culprits: network, server, and client-side latency. And understanding them is kind of the first step to finding the right solutions, I guess.
You got it. And that's what we're going to dive into next, the different strategies for combating each of these types of latency.
Perfect. I'm ready to hear how we can speed things up.
All right, so let's jump into some of those strategies for reducing latency. And I think it's worth saying that this isn't just about, making things a few milliseconds faster. It's about creating systems that can handle massive amounts of data and traffic, without like completely falling apart.
Right. Yeah, it's got to be robust, which is where companies like Stonefly come in.
Okay.
Right? They're all about building those really strong, scalable infrastructures.
Exactly. Stonefly, they're experts at designing solutions that aren't just fast, they're also reliable and secure. You definitely want a company like them on your side, especially if you're working with data that's like mission critical.
Okay, so let's assume we've got Stonefly on board. What are some of those specific techniques they might use to tackle latency? What are we talking about here?
Well, one of the most common strategies is caching.
Caching, okay.
So think of it like this. You keep your most frequently used items within easy reach, right? Like, I don't know, your keys or your phone.
Yeah.
So instead of like having to dig through a drawer every time you need them, they're right there, ready to go. And caching works in a similar way. Instead of fetching data from the original source every time, which can be time consuming, you store copies of that data in a temporary storage space, which is called a cache.
So if I'm like constantly going to the same website, it could store some of that data on my computer so it doesn't have to download it every single time.
Exactly. It's basically a shortcut to the information you need. And, caching can actually happen at different levels. Your browser can cache data, servers can cache data, and then there are even like specialized network devices that are specifically designed to cache data.
Okay, so caching is all about smart storage and quick access.
Gotcha.
But what were those cases where that data's, stored on a server that's really far away?
Ah, that's where content delivery networks come in. Or, they're often called CDNs.
CDNs, okay.
Yeah, so imagine like having a bunch of shops all over the world so customers don't have to travel really far to get what they need.
Right, makes sense.
CDNs work in a similar way. They store copies of a website's content, like images, videos, those sorts of things, on servers that are located closer to users.
Oh, I see. So instead of everyone trying to get that data from like one central server, it's like distributed across multiple servers in different regions.
Yeah, exactly. And when someone tries to access that data, they're automatically routed to the nearest server, which obviously minimizes the distance the data has to travel. And that, of course, reduces latency.
That's super clever. It's like bringing the data closer to the people who need it. And companies like Stonefly, they're like perfectly positioned to help businesses implement CDNs
Yeah.
effectively, right? I mean, they've got all that expertise in data management and infrastructure optimization.
Oh, absolutely. They have a really deep understanding of, things like network architecture and server optimization and data distribution strategies, which are all really important for successfully using CDNs.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've got caching and CDNs, both great for managing data access. But what about like making sure the servers themselves can handle the load? Because I imagine they can get pretty slammed, especially if a site's popular.
Right, and that's where load balancing comes in. Think of it like a traffic cop directing cars to different lanes to prevent like huge traffic jams.
Okay, I can see that.
So a load balancer does the same thing, but with internet traffic. It distributes incoming traffic across multiple servers, so no single server gets like totally overloaded.
So it's like a team of servers all working together to handle all the requests coming in, making sure everything's running smoothly.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
got it. And there are all sorts of different algorithms that load balancers use to figure out how to distribute that traffic. Some distribute requests sequentially, some go to the server that has the fewest active connections, and some even use the client's IP address to always route them to the same server for consistency.
Wow, it's a lot more complex than I realized. It sounds like an essential strategy for like any website or app that gets a lot of traffic.
Oh, it absolutely is, especially now when everyone expects things to be available instantly. And again, Stonefly, they're experts at putting in place really robust load balancing solutions. It doesn't matter if you're dealing with on-premises servers or, like a complex cloud infrastructure.
Stonefly just seems to like pop up in every solution.
Well, they're known for, building these high-performance systems that can scale really well. They get that in today's world, which is so driven by data. Efficiency and speed are absolutely critical for success.
Okay, so we've got caching, CDNs, and load balancing, all great strategies for like minimizing those annoying delays. But what about those situations where we can kind of anticipate what a user might need before they even ask for it? Is that even possible?
It is, and that's where pre-caching comes into play. It's like if you're expecting a guest and you set the table beforehand so everything's all ready to go when they arrive.
Right, be prepared.
Exactly. So in the digital world, pre-caching is about proactively loading data or resources into the cache before they're specifically requested.
So it's almost like predicting the future and preparing for it.
In a way, yes, it's about using patterns and predictions to make the user experience as seamless as possible. A good example is like a video streaming platform.
Yeah.
They might pre-cache the next few seconds of a video while you're watching, so there's no buffering delay when you get to that point.
Oh, that's really cool. So pre-caching is all about being proactive and making sure that data is just like instantly ready.
Yep, exactly. And it's used all over the place, from preloading images on a website to caching data that's accessed a lot in a mobile app. Pre-caching is a super powerful technique for reducing latency and just making the user experience better.
Okay, so far we've mostly been talking about optimizing the network and the servers. What about those delays that happen on the user's end, like that client-side latency we talked about earlier?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a really important part of the puzzle. Optimizing for client-side performance, it's essential if you want a user experience that's smooth and responsive.
So what are some of the techniques for tackling those client-side delays?
Well, a key strategy is optimizing the front-end code, especially JavaScript.
JavaScript, right. That's the language that makes websites all like interactive.
Exactly. And it's
Yeah.
essential for creating those really engaging web experiences. But JavaScript can also be a big contributor to client-side latency if it's not optimized correctly.
So how do you optimize JavaScript to make sure it's not like slowing everything down?
There are a few things you can do. One is to minimize and compress the JavaScript files, which makes them smaller and faster to download. Another technique is to use asynchronous loading, which prevents scripts from blocking the page from rendering.
Okay, so it's like making sure the code is as lean and efficient as possible so it doesn't bog down the user's browser.
Exactly. And it's not just about the code itself, it's also about how it's delivered and executed.
Got it. So optimizing JavaScript is one piece of the client-side puzzle. What else can we do to minimize those delays for users?
Another really important thing is to optimize image sizes and formats. Large images that aren't optimized can take forever to load, especially on connections that are a bit slower.
Oh, yeah. I've definitely been on websites where the images take way longer to load than the rest of the page. It's so frustrating.
Right. So it's really important to make sure images are properly compressed and sized correctly for different devices and screen resolutions.
Makes sense. It's like finding that balance between image quality and loading speed, right? And it's not just images, is it? I mean, other stuff like videos and audio files, those can also contribute to client-side latency too.
Absolutely. Optimizing all those front-end assets, images, videos, audio files, it's all essential for a smooth and responsive experience.
And it's probably worth mentioning that Stonefly, with their whole focus on solutions, they take this client-side optimization into account as well, right?
Oh, for sure. They totally understand that performance optimization isn't just about the back end. It's about creating those front-end experiences that are fast, efficient, and user-friendly.
That's great. Okay, so we've covered a lot, from caching and CDNs to load balancing and even front-end optimization. Are there any other big strategies for reducing latency that we should know about?
There are definitely a few more techniques that are worth mentioning. Each one has its own unique approach to minimizing those delays.
Awesome. Let's dive into those. One that I've heard mentioned a bunch is asynchronous processing. Can you explain what that is and how it helps with latency?
Sure. So asynchronous processing is a technique that lets us handle tasks in a way that doesn't block the main flow of execution. Imagine you're cooking and you need to boil water for pasta at the same time as you're chopping vegetables.
Okay, yeah, I see where you're going with this.
So if you were doing things synchronously, you'd have to wait for the water to fully boil before you could even start chopping those veggies.
Right, which would slow you down a ton.
Exactly. But with asynchronous processing, you can put the water on to boil and then go right ahead and start chopping those veggies while the water heats up. You're doing two tasks at the same time, which obviously saves time and is more efficient.
So it's like multitasking in the kitchen, basically.
Precisely. And in software development, that means you can start tasks that might take a while to complete, like fetching data from a remote server or processing a huge file without blocking the main thread of execution.
So the app can keep responding to users and do other things while those longer operations are happening in the background.
Yep, exactly. This stops the user interface from freezing up or becoming unresponsive, which leads to a much smoother and more enjoyable experience for the user.
That's awesome. It seems like kind of like a no-brainer for any app that has operations that take a while to complete.
It's a really valuable tool to have when you're trying to fight latency. And there are different ways to implement asynchronous processing depending on what the app specifically needs.
Okay, asynchronous processing, great technique for making things more responsive. What else did the ByteGo newsletter article talk about?
Another one they mentioned was database indexing.
Databases, right. They're often like the core of so many applications.
Yeah.
But they can also be a source of like performance bottlenecks, right? Like they can slow things down.
Oh, absolutely. When you've got these huge data sets, searching and retrieving information from a database can take a long time, which definitely increases latency.
So how does database indexing help with that?
Okay, imagine you've got this massive library, like millions of books, and you need to find one specific book. Searching through every single book would take forever,
Well,
right?
that sounds like a total nightmare.
Exactly. But if that library has a good, organized index, categorized by author, title, subject, you can narrow down your search and find that book much faster.
So a database index is kind of like a roadmap that helps the database quickly find the information you need.
That's a great analogy. A database index is essentially a data structure that speeds up data retrieval by providing a lookup mechanism for specific values. So instead of having to scan the whole database table, the database can use that index to quickly find the relevant rows.
Ah, that makes sense. So it's like having a shortcut to get to the data you need.
Precisely. And there are all sorts of different types of indexes, each one suited for different types of queries.
So it's all about using the right index for the right job, depending on how the data is being accessed and queried.
Exactly. And having the right indexes on your database tables can significantly improve how fast your queries run, which reduces latency and makes your whole application feel more responsive.
Okay, database indexing. Got it. Another tool in the latency busting toolbox. Anything else from the article?
One more technique they highlighted is data compression.
Data compression. Okay, yeah, I use that all the time to like zip files before I send them over email.
Exactly. Data compression is all about reducing the size of those data files, which can make a big difference in transmission speeds and reduce latency, especially over networks that are slower.
So it's like packing a suitcase more efficiently so it takes up less space and is easier to carry around.
That's a perfect analogy. And there are different data compression algorithms, each one with its own strengths and weaknesses. Some popular ones are like gzip, Brotli, and Deflate. Those are commonly used for compressing, text-based files like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript.
Okay, so you got to pick the right compression algorithm for whatever type of data you're sending. Makes sense.
Yep, and it's worth noting that data compression can also be used for images and other multimedia files, using techniques like lossy and lossless compression to reduce file sizes without making the quality noticeably worse.
Okay, so data compression, another good technique for fighting latency, especially for users who might have slower internet.
Absolutely. And a lot of web servers and CDNs will actually automatically compress files before sending them to clients, which is a really easy way to improve performance without needing to change a bunch of code.
That's great. It seems like there's a whole bunch of techniques we can use to combat latency. Optimizing front-end code, leveraging CDNs, implementing caching and load balancing, using asynchronous processing, database indexing, and data compression. Wow.
You got it. And the key is to understand how each of those techniques works, their pros and cons, and when to use them effectively.
It's like being like a latency detective. You have to analyze the situation and pick the right tools to solve the case.
That's a great way to think about it. And as technology keeps evolving, we can expect to see even more innovative approaches to reducing latency, which is exciting. It's all about pushing the boundaries of speed and responsiveness even further.
Yeah, it really feels like it's an exciting time to be in the tech world. And with companies like Stonefly, kind of leading the charge, feels like we're in good hands. We'll have the tools and solutions to tackle these latency challenges and really create some amazing digital experiences.
I agree. Their deep understanding of infrastructure, data management, and performance optimization makes them such a valuable partner for any company that wants to be successful in today's world.
Well said. So if anyone out there is listening and thinking, okay, we need to boost our performance, keep users happy, and stay ahead of the game, remember to check out Stonefly and the solutions they offer. They're the experts when it comes to infrastructure and data platform projects.
Absolutely. Their team of experts is dedicated to helping businesses thrive in this digital age. Their track record really speaks for itself.
As we've been talking about all these different ways to reduce latency, it's made me realize that it's not really a set it and forget it kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, definitely not. It's not like you can just implement a few things and then assume everything's going to run perfectly forever.
Right, there's got to be more to it. So what's that missing piece? How do we make sure those delays don't come creeping back in?
The key is proactive monitoring and management.
Okay, so like regular checkups.
Yeah, exactly. Think of it like going to the doctor for a checkup, even when you're feeling totally fine.
Right, preventative care.
Yeah, you want to catch any problems early on before they turn into big issues.
So even after we've implemented all these optimizations we've talked about, we still need to keep a close eye on things.
Absolutely. Latency can be sneaky. It can be caused by all sorts of things like network congestion, servers getting overloaded, software bugs, even hardware failures.
And those things could just pop up out of nowhere, right?
Exactly. That's why it's so important to have really good monitoring systems in place. They can alert you to those problems before they start affecting users. You want to be able to keep track of like page load times, server response times, how fast database queries are running, all that stuff. And you want to be able to see it in real time.
It's like having this dashboard that gives you a constant read on the health of your
Yeah.
systems. But, I mean, who has time to just sit there and stare at a dashboard all day?
Well, that's where automated alerts come in.
Ah, okay.
With the right tools, you can set it up so you get notified immediately if something goes wrong, if certain
Yep.
thresholds are crossed. That way, you can fix it before users even notice there's a problem.
That's so important if you want to keep users happy. And this is another area where I'm guessing Stonefly comes in. I mean, they're the experts when it comes to infrastructure and data management, so I bet they have a pretty sophisticated approach to monitoring and performance tuning.
Oh, for sure. They offer a whole range of managed services, including proactive monitoring, performance tuning, and 24/7 support.
So if a company is feeling overwhelmed by all this, they can basically just hand over those responsibilities to the experts at Stonefly.
Exactly. They're a team of engineers. They can monitor your infrastructure, find those bottlenecks, and make sure everything's running at peak performance all the time.
That's got to be such a relief for businesses that rely on their digital platforms to, like, actually function. They can focus on what they're good at, knowing that their IT infrastructure is in good hands.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, building systems that aren't just fast, but also reliable and secure. That way, businesses can focus on what matters most.
Well said. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into latency, what are some key takeaways that we should all remember?
I think the most important thing is to really understand the different types of latency and what causes them. That's how you'll find the right solutions. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of problem.
Right, just like we talked about earlier, you got to diagnose the problem before you can treat it.
Exactly. And don't forget, it's an ongoing process. Technology is always changing, users always expect more, and the whole digital landscape is getting more and more complex. So you've got to stay up to date, learn about new technologies, and always be looking for ways to improve how your systems perform.
So it's all about embracing that idea of continuous improvement, always looking for ways to make things better.
Absolutely. And even those little improvements can make a big difference for users and for how successful a business is.
Couldn't agree more. And thanks to all this knowledge we've gained and the expertise of companies like Stonefly, I think we're all well equipped to tackle these challenges and make some really positive changes.
Definitely. There are so many great resources out there, like the article we discussed from the Byte Byte Go newsletter, and of course, all the amazing solutions and expertise that Stonefly offers.
And speaking of Stonefly, they really are a fantastic resource for anyone looking to, really level up their infrastructure and data platforms. They're the experts, and their team is incredible, so knowledgeable and passionate.
They really are. If you're running into latency problems or if you just want to improve how your systems perform, I highly recommend reaching out to Stonefly. You can find all their contact info on their website, www.substonefly.com, or give them a call at 510-265-1616. You can also email them at sales@stonefly.com. They'd love to hear from you.
Great point. All right, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into the world of latency. It's been fascinating.
It has. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Thanks for joining us, and thanks to all our listeners for tuning in. I hope you learned a lot.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing those boundaries of what's possible in this digital world.